All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to UWC Diligence Career Choice Panel. Today, we're joined by three of our parents who will be discussing their careers as it relates to international affairs, international development. We're really grateful for their time, sharing this with us. And please, if you have any questions, there should be a Q&A box where you can answer questions if you're joining via Zoom, or you can add questions to Facebook, and we'll ask those questions to our professionals that we have here today. So the way our format will work is we will have each of our panelists presenting a little bit about their careers for about 5 to 7, 8 minutes. And then we will have a Q&A after each has presented. So our first panelist today will be Elaine Konkiewicz, and I'll quickly read her bio. She's a senior international development professional with 28 years of experience in sustainable development, human rights, rule of law, gender equality, democratic institution building, conflict resolution, and preventive diplomacy. Ms. Konkiewicz joined UNDP as resident representative in Mongolia in November 2019, where she manages a portfolio covering governance, climate change, and natural resource management. From 2014 to 2019, she was UN Women Representative in Kazakhstan, promoting gender equality and women's empowerment across Central Asia. From 2012 to 2014, she served as Director, Department of Democratization, OSCE mission in Kosovo, promoting good governance, democratic elections, and media freedom. And then from 1993 to 2012, she worked with the OSCE, UN, international NGOs in Tajikistan, Armenia, Austria, Belarus, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Switzerland, Latvia, and Germany. A lot of places. She has an MA in International Studies from the American University School of International Service, Washington, D.C., and is fluent in English, German, and Russian. Thank you so much for joining us. You may take it away. You're muted.
Yep, see that, sorry about that. Yeah, so it's a great pleasure. I join you from Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia right now, so very pleased to be joining you and to be speaking to the UWC students. So just a few words, about my background and kind of trajectory and experience. I actually was a math and science student in high school, very interested in that. And I think my fate changed when I joined Model United Nations in 12th grade. I had the opportunity as a high school student to live and study abroad for half a year, and I think that also changed my trajectory. So when I came back, I decided to join Model United Nations, which got me very interested in that. And then when I went into university, I was supposed to be a German and chemistry major. And then I wanted to study abroad in Germany, so I had to take an extra, whole year of German course in order to study. And then the chemistry fell off. And long story short, I got off the science bandwagon and into the international affairs trajectory, and went on to graduate in international affairs, and went to graduate school specifically in Washington, D.C. I had said, because my area of interest is Eastern Europe, Soviet Union, at that time, Soviet Union and Balkans, and so decided that I absolutely had to be in New York or Washington, D.C., and was successful to go to American University and graduate, and did my master's thesis on actually preventive diplomacy in the United Nations. And I got a very lucky break starting as a FACEL fellow. It's a program that doesn't exist anymore, but when the wall fell, the Berlin Wall fell, they had positions with the US embassies behind the Iron Curtain, as it was called at the time. And so I was very lucky to be selected to work in the US Embassy office in Berlin, right literally the day after I got my master's degree. So I graduated one day, was on the plane the next, and basically for the last 28, actually almost 29 years, I've been working overseas, and worked first in the US Embassy in the political section, which was very interesting, and then used the opportunity to also reach out and look more into the area of preventive diplomacy, which was the areas I mentioned that I wrote my master's thesis on, and so looked particularly at the UN in that regards, and the OSCE, which is the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and got very lucky and this is one of the kind of advice I guess students are looking at, is to kind of reach out to people in the network and just proactively ask to go and work with them. So basically what I did is I wrote to a major researcher at UNITAR in Geneva, which is the UN Institute for Training and Research, basically offering to go and work for free because my job at the embassy was finishing, and it took a while. It was a half a year, but she finally said, yeah, sure, come, I can use an assistant, why not? And that also then led to, you know, other engagements. So I ended up working there for a year and a half. And while I was at the embassy, I had the very lucky opportunity to be introduced to the US ambassador to the CSE at the time, which is now the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, and to talk about preventive diplomacy, and just had an informal conversation. And then I decided on my own expense to take the train from Berlin to Vienna, where the CSC at the time, OSCE's headquarters, to meet with more people there and explore opportunities. And that then later paid off, because then when the war in Bosnia was signed through the Dayton Peace Agreements, I was contacted by the US State Department to go on the mission there to work as a human rights officer. And so I was flown into Sarajevo, Bosnia 4 months after the end of the war, and landed on the tarmac, and they said, okay, you're going to be a human rights officer. And I went, okay, sure, why not? And spent 2 years working in Bosnia, and great experience, very tough, hard environment, of course, in a post-conflict setting, but very, very rewarding. And so, you know, one thing kind of led to another, I guess. And so, you know, really pursuing, I think, you know, reaching out to people that are working in the environment and just kind of offering, you know, to be a part or to partner, to work and to explore different options kind of really paid off. And even sometimes at your own expense. I mean, in the sense of, you know, just traveling, like I said, to Vienna to meet, and then that paid off. And so I was able to, you know, continue on that trajectory and work my way up through the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And the OSCE has a 10-year life limit that you can work for them. So then I switched to the United Nations, and, you know, got back on that track and was able to, you know, get on working as UN Women, most recently for the last 5 years in Kazakhstan. Very focused, obviously, on gender equality and women's empowerment in all of Central Asia, and then moved to the United Nations Development Program now, also as a resident representative in Mongolia. So, I mean, that's kind of a short, because I have 5 minutes, kind of trajectory of, you know, how I kind of went about what I did and some of the reasoning behind, you know, where I sought education or where I wanted to position myself. So maybe I'll stop there. I don't know if there's, you know, because you want to do questions and things like that. So
Yeah, I can ask a few follow-up questions.
Sure.
First, what is preventive diplomacy?
Sure. So preventive diplomacy is a term that was coined a long time ago in the United Nations with the Secretary General Boutros Boutros-Ghali, like in the early 1990s. And it's a policy by where diplomats and international professionals work to prevent conflicts through diplomacy. So you use early warning, you know, sensing, monitoring, you know, developments, economic, political, security developments, even natural disasters now, and environmental things can contribute to crisis situations. And so there's various different mechanisms for doing that, through negotiation, to double track diplomacy, two-track diplomacy, mediation, and, you know, trying to do what they call good offices. So that's all like the backroom diplomacy that goes on, like what's going on now between, you know, Ukraine and Russia, and how, you know, US and Europe and Macron and the others are, Schultz are trying to help to prevent the war. That's preventive diplomacy, you know, preventing a war or crisis from occurring. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned that you were a human rights officer. What exactly was that position?
Yeah, so I did human rights work in Belarus and Bosnia, as mentioned. I mean, even in Armenia and different countries. And human rights is based on the state's, you know, obligation to protect the rights of its citizens based on the International Human Rights Convention, so the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and in the context of the OSCE, the human rights provisions that are coming through the different agreements. And so very much you work with the state bodies, the government bodies, to ensure that they're protecting the human rights of the citizens, but you also work with citizens to ensure that, you know, they're able to have their rights respected. So it's what's called a human rights-based approach, working with duty bearers and right holders. So very concretely, like what was doing was protecting the rights of the people after the war, their right to election, I mean, to elect officials in post-war Bosnia. And that included also allowing people to move from one side of the country to the other, you know, because they were displaced during the war, protecting their rights to property, to ownership, health rights, protection rights, a lot of different rights. So just in a nutshell.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I have a few more questions. Can you explain what the UNDP is? And then another question is, how important do you think it is to can speak different languages to your career?
Sure. UNDP is the United Nations Development Program. It's the largest development organization, one of the largest agencies of the United Nations. We work in over 170 countries around the world, and have an overarching mandate to work on human development, sustainable development, now with the Sustainable Development Goals. So everything from poverty to poverty reduction, of course, to digitalization, tackling climate change, gender equality, natural resource management. It's a very broad reaching organization that works in many, many countries around the world to you know, support the development of countries, from the least developed to even medium developed, and even some high income developing countries have UNDP presence. I mean, we're present in many, many countries around the world. We work with governments, we work with populations, private sector, and really try to bring everyone together to foster productive, you know, sustainable human development. As far as speaking different languages, absolutely. I think it's definitely an added bonus. I mean, in my realm, I decided to work in the countries actually of my ancestors, which come from Eastern Europe. And so that's why I learned German first, then Russian, and I tried Polish, but didn't get very far with it. My last name is actually Polish. But it really paid off in the work. And actually, Mongolia is the first country that I've ever worked in where I actually don't speak the language, although there are some people who speak Russian here, and that can help from time to time. But it does make a world of difference when in all the countries where I worked that, you know, I could utilize, for example, Russian. You know, even if it wasn't the first language, but all the post-Soviet countries, you know, being able to speak directly in the with the government counterparts, with the civil society, with the citizens, to read the news is hugely important. Because here, like, I can't quite get the sense and the vibe of, you know, what's going on because I can't read the local news. I mean, the people I work with, they'll all speak English, of course, but still you're missing that connection with really understanding, you know, what makes the society here tick, or what the mood is and things like that, or how the politics are going, because you can't, you know, read all that additional information. So definitely the languages of where you want to work is a huge, huge added asset.
Great. And then one last question, and we'll move on. Can you tell us a bit about the work that you're doing in Mongolia, and kind of, you know, how has it been developing? Yes, tell us a bit about your work.
Yeah, sure. So I've been here a little over 2 years. We have a very diverse portfolio of projects and programs, roughly about $15 million that I manage. A large amount is dealing with climate change and climate adaptation. We get a large grant, $23 million over 7 years from the Green Climate Fund, that we're working with the Ministry of Environment on improving the climate adaptation measures here to benefit the herders. I mean, you may know Mongolia is a nomadic community. So a lot is dependent on the herders and how they're able to manage the land and deal with climate effects. We also, in that connection, work a lot on biodiversity preservation and working on combating like deforestation and land degradation, again, for, you know, the benefit of the rural population. We have a large project also on supporting women in decision-making, funded by the government of Korea, which is basically, you know, to get more women in parliament, to put it bluntly, because they only have 17% women in parliament, which is way too low, and they should have more. And so there's a huge project we're running on that. We also, supported by the European Union on SDG aligned budgeting, which is to help the government and the ministries to invest the state budget to deliver against the goals, the sustainable development goals. What else do we work on? We work on supporting the cashmere industry here. Mongolia is very famous for the cashmere, so we support the herders and the whole cashmere value chain to add value to improve that, as an export commodity. We work on supporting the civil service reform here so that all the civil servants are working in line with the legislation and, not being corrupt basically, and fulfilling their duties and being promoted and selected and promoting according to, proper human resources procedures and, following principles of meritocracy and not having, just people appointed into government positions. So we work on a lot of issues. I know my time is short, but just to give a flavor of some of them. So, yeah.
No, thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, so we're gonna move on now to our second panelist. We're gonna move on to Bin Ajemian. I'm sorry if I've butchered your name. He is deputy head of unit at the Directorate General for Neighborhood and Enlargement Negotiations, DG NEAR, at the European Commission. He was previously the head of sector economic development, Eastern Partnership countries, the head of cooperation for the EU delegation to Armenia, and head of the infrastructure section in Benin. Bin also has extensive experience in public-private partnerships in Asia. He graduated from Harvard Kennedy School of Government, l'École Polytechnique, and l'École des Ponts et Chaussées in Paris with an MPP, MSc, and MEng, a lot of degrees, and he is Tao's father. So take it away, Bin.
Thanks, Harvey, and hello to everyone. How can I start? Maybe. So how did I end up doing the job I'm doing? First, I truly love my job. I mean, I really think I enjoy it because of the potential impact I have, and I'll tell you more. But what's my journey that brought me here? When I was in high school, I was studying math, physics, and but quite excited about doing MUN, like ELEN, Model European Parliament, Model European Council. I think I spent most of my time involved in this kind of debating societies. Then when came the time of selecting a university, I wanted to study political science, but my dad at the time thought that as an Armenian, Vietnamese, French, there was no career for me in the sector. So he told me, study science. I nevertheless applied to Cambridge, political science, but then my dad put pressure on me. It got accepted. My dad put pressure on me, said, no, you get a living to pay for a family. So you study engineering and then you can do political science. So I studied engineering for probably 6 years, then applied and by luck got a scholarship to go to the Kennedy School in Harvard, and got a scholarship for a private sector company. So I had to continue working as an engineer. I work as an engineer in China, in Korea, in the Fiji Island, kind of enjoyed it quite a lot. But then came the day where I felt like my heart bit into trying to change the world. So it was 2009, financial crisis, and questioning myself about should I change or not. So I decided to make the move. Went to West Africa, I loved it, and then continued to Armenia and to Brussels. But in a nutshell, what am I doing? So the European Union, it's providing 50% of official development aid to countries around the world. When I was in Benin, for example, in Cotonou, the section I was managing was in charge of something like 15% of the budget of the state, so 1/5, and that was my first job as a civil servant. And in different places, so in my current position, but maybe number doesn't really matter to you. We kind of oversee a portfolio of 70 billion euro investment, meaning that we're financing most of the roads, most of the water plants, most of the schools, most of the education system. And the whole question is, one point is, how do I have impact? How do I change the world? It's not easy. it's not easy. It's not because you're elected that you know how to do it. It's not because you're a minister. And with Natalia, we worked a lot in Armenia. We were working a lot with the Ministry of Justice, trying to see how do we improve justice? I mean, you're the minister tomorrow, you don't change the justice system. There are judges, there are systems, there are process. So we develop different projects, we develop different approach, we benchmark, we network, we connect, we push, we read, we dream, we put money, we try, we test, we learn from failures. And it was interesting because the sister of Tao told me one day, "Hey, Dad, you don't have a passion. It's just your work." And in a way, it's true. I truly love my work. Not because the books I read are related to my work. And each time I'm sure Tao, each time I'm reading a book, I kind of develop a new project, and I get the connection. I push agenda. And I truly believe, and this is totally the UWC motto, the reason why you're in UWC, that we can make a change, and it's part of our responsibility. At the same time, you can take pleasure, because the pleasure I take, and you have failure, so you have to take pleasure, but the pleasure I take is that I hope I create, because the solution how to be created. And the creation is gathering thoughts, gathering people, building political consensus also, because you're not only a civil servant, you also ensure that different forces engaging with government, engaging with the private sectors. And sometimes you can do things and you're proud of it. And you see a new change, you see people laughing, you see a new school, you see a new system. In Armenia, for example, a project that was quite important was during the 6 years ago, during an election process that we were supporting with Natalia, with the EU, and push to ensure that every single citizen in Armenia had a digital ID. And only with a digital ID can you start doing e-governance, and e-governance cut corruption, improve efficiency, ensure there's a lot of spillover effects. So it's at the same time policy driven, so vision, and at the same time details. And the realities in detail. So playing on the two levels make it really enjoyable. So I do love my career. Up to now, might change because it's still a couple of years to go before getting retired. But that's so if you are to pick a place to work, yes. If you're paid to help people, that's probably the best job you could have. And I think if I was one of the super rich billionaire, I would do my job. I would try to have impact. So I enjoyed it.
All right, thank you very much. I have a few follow-up questions. So your kind of undergraduate education and your first with professional experiences were in engineering. Can you say what you've been able to apply from your engineering education to the work that you're doing now? Are there specific skills that you gained, or anything else that you can say you're having that engineering background has been helpful to you?
Actually, it has been quite helpful, because I was not going to say the world is built by engineers, but if you want to fight climate change, if you want to bring the big change, and one thing we talk in our world of development, we talk about moving from billion to trillions, meaning that we need to crowd in, we need to attract private sectors, we need to engage with all the forces of societies. And I think it's very important when you're in the policy sector, when you're in the politics in this world of public sector, to know how is the real economy working, how things are being built. And this, unless you were talking, Harvey, before about is it important to speak different language? I would say before being able to speak different languages, you had to speak different cultural languages. There's a culture in the private sector, there's a culture of civil society. These are important in particular to, unless we make all the forces working together, we're not going to reach and ensure the change we're expecting to have. So it was tremendously helpful to have been in the private sector as an engineer, to build factories, to negotiate deals in different countries. For the job I'm doing now, which is totally focusing on supporting citizens' future.
All right, thank you. So I have another question here. It's interesting that you're involved in the private sector development of the EU. It is not normally what we think about the role of the EU. What is the main mission of the EU? And kind of connected to what perhaps our students would be interested in. Are there internship opportunities that you can think of within the EU or European Commission?
I mean, this is a super broad question. I'm sure there's hundreds of PhD on. I mean, the EU is a peace project first. And first and foremost, we brought peace and prosperity to a part of the world. Yes, there are tensions on the neighboring countries, but within the European Union, we have peace, and that's very important. Second, there's a complexity and many policies, but the one I'm working on, and this is why it's interesting, the one I'm working on are only focusing on third countries, so countries outside the EU, and we want them to be to grow in an inclusive, democratic way, because we believe in the EU that only if you have neighbors and the entire world that has a certain degrees of development and citizen engagement through pluralistic democracy can we live also in our own continent on a peaceful and safe manner. And so in a way, I have the opportunity to focus on a policy I believe in. If I were working in the European Commission on trade, my job would be to defend the trade interest of European companies against the interests of companies, for example, in Benin or in Armenia. So it's really different. There's different policies, and I pick the one I kind of enjoy. In terms of internship, we are very complex because you need. I mean, you can do an internship at in the delegation. That's easier. I mean, in Armenia, for example, in Georgia, that's quite easy. If you go to HQ, there's a process because in the EU, in the European Commission, we tend in the EU, outside the EU, we pay our trainee because we consider that if they work, they have to be paid. If they paid, they have to be selected through a transparent process. And there's a lot of discussion. Opportunities often start with a training. Actually, you start to know the thing. So if people from university wants to do training, I think it's easier to work in a delegation, for sure. And there are opportunities.
Okay, great. All right, thank you very much. So we will, actually, I just want to say, before we move on to Natalia, unfortunately, Elaine had to go, or fortunately, probably solving the problems of the world. She had to run to a meeting with actually a few other intergovernmental organizations. So she sends her apologies. So now we will move on to Natalia Butova. She's a lawyer by training. She studied law in Bulgaria and France. She has worked for Doctors Without Borders in war zones. Yet she believes that the most challenging profession is the one of being a parent. For many years, she has worked for the Council of Europe. 4 years ago, she set a challenge for herself to obtain a master's degree from the London School of Economics in psychology and behavioral science, which has been a really rewarding experience for her. The subjects she's most passionate about are fighting against all forms of discrimination, as well as supporting civic and investigative journalism. All right, Natalia, take it away.
Good afternoon. Can you see me okay? No? Okay.
We can see you perfectly.
Okay, the question is, can you see my slides?
I can see your slide. Hopefully everyone else can, but I can see it from my end.
Okay. So good afternoon, Harvey, all participants. It's really a pleasure to be here. As you would have understood, we have worked with BEAN in Armenia, and before that I also worked with Elaine in Armenia, so all roads lead to Armenia. Today I'm based in Tbilisi, not far away from Dilijan, and I would like to share with you some prospects from my more than 25 years career in international organizations. So I will start by the question, who am I? I'm someone who had the opportunities to be exposed from early childhood to international environments, as my father was a diplomat and my mother was passionate about social justice. So they were my role model, and this is also to anticipate the question, is it important to speak foreign languages? So yes, definitely speaking at least one foreign language is crucial, I would say. What I have also learned from my childhood and I have taken from there are the values that my family has provided me. Protection of human rights, promotion of human rights, social justice, equity were really among my family values. And when I was 16, I wanted to become a diplomat in my home country, Bulgaria. But back then, girls were discriminated, so they couldn't study diplomacy. So I went for law, first for national and then for international law. And I have never regretted having chosen law, because this provided me with great opportunities professionally further. So when I was preparing this presentation, I thought about some of the aspects of my work and the work with the many people I have been working for many years. Like, what are the most important aspects, what are the most qualities that you would lead you to an interesting and meaningful profession. So definitely knowledge is extremely important. I mean, you can lose everything in your life, from other people. Your car can be stolen, your house can be burned down, but your knowledge, your skills will always stay with you. The other aspect is passion. I think that knowledge plus passion makes a superpower. It makes you super powerful because you can be passionate about something when you're 15 or 18. Your passion can change when you're 25, 40, or 60. But the most interesting people I have met in my professional life have always been passionate people. Creativity, I mean, working outside, thinking outside of the box is crucial, especially in modern times, which can also contribute to changing the world. And of course, professionalism. Professionalism is not only about your expertise or your knowledge, but it's about your ethical models, about how you interact with people, whether you respect them or not is part of the professionalism. And empathy and kindness is something that will definitely add another dimension to your profile, to your professional profile. Because again, in my professional life, I have always valued all the quality I just mentioned, but not only the extra touch, but the extra quality for me is kindness, is empathy, is being forwarded to other people. I have worked for the Council of Europe for many years, which is the oldest European organization which promotes human rights, rule of law, and democracy. Which is based in Strasbourg and which was established in 1949. But before that, I worked for Doctors Without Borders, which is one of the biggest non-governmental humanitarian organization. I worked in Chechnya, and again, there I got one of the most wonderful experiences in my life. And probably at the Q&A session, we could discuss what kind of professions are important for international organizations, because as been mentioned, you can be an engineer and work for international organizations. You can be an architect, you can be a lawyer, and there are really dozens of them. So it's not limited at all. But probably if you are interested in a career in international organization, the international organization you will work in 5, 10, 15, 20 years probably have nothing to do with the international organizations in which I have worked or I'm currently working, because these are international organizations, they have already started going through crucial changes. They will continue to change because of the world order, because of the will of the member states. So some of these organizations will probably shrink their actions.
All right, sorry, Natalia. Are you meant to be going through your presentation? Because we're still only seeing the first slide.
Sorry. Well, okay. So, stop sharing. Can we switch it? We'll get. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think sorry. So I meant that the international organizations will be absolutely different from the one that we know now. So as an end to my presentation, what I wanted also to say is that when you will go into your professional career, there are this knowledge, this competence that you will acquire. But as a person who have worked with many different professionals, I have been on recruitment panels for years and years. You have to be very careful and very committed to this combination of skills that you will have, which will make sure that you will stand above the crowd.
Thank you very much, Natalia. I have a few follow-up questions. Can you tell us a bit about the work that you're doing now with, you're with the Council of Europe now? Yes?
Yes,
can you tell us a bit about the work that you do?
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna list all the activities that we have here in the office, as they're really very diverse. But maybe I will talk about some aspects of our work which are particularly important to me. Is fight against discrimination, fight against domestic violence and gender-based violence, and as I put it in my bio, promotion of civic and investigative journalism. Anti-discrimination, unfortunately, this is we all hoped that once states like Armenia, Georgia, other states in the region where the Council of Europe works started put their feet on this democratic path, that things will only improve. But unfortunately, we see that sometimes things go backward, and that discrimination is very much still very much widespread. Stigma, non-acceptance of people who are different. So it is about perceptions, of course. It is about legislation. It is about practices. So these are the kind of things that the Council of Europe here in Georgia is trying to prevent and to promote with the authorities, but also very much so with non-governmental organizations. And by the way, I found that one of the most interesting part of my work is when non-governmental organizations are involved. Gender-based violence, again, it's rooted in discrimination. It's the perception that probably women are second-rate citizens, that they have a well-established social role which they cannot go beyond. So it is about empowering young girls and women. It's about changing the perception of what women can do in society, and what should be the interaction between men and women. And when it comes to investigative journalism and civic journalism is journalism promoted by non-governmental organizations. It's an engaged journalism in terms of human rights and again anti-discrimination. Because in this part of the world, it goes for Armenia, it goes for Georgia and many other countries, unfortunately, the quality of the journalism is not the one that should be expected in an open-minded and democratic society. And you can't have a democratic and developed society without a good quality journalism. And this even goes more for investigative journalists, where you have to get the proper skills, where you will have to spend weeks, sometimes months, investigating some cases, and then offering these cases, the findings to the public, in order to help accountable the public authorities on any cases which go against rule of law, democracy, and human rights.
All right, thank you so much, Natalia. So now we're gonna move into our Q&A portion. So I will ask some general questions to the two of you, and I will just take it from there. So our first question, what does you guys, I know that you both do quite a bit, but it will be great for students to get a sense of what your day looks like, or what your kind of average week looks like. Are you constantly in meetings? Are you doing, something else? Can you give us a sense of what your average week looks like? Ben, do you want to go first? Or Natalia, whichever.
So I would say around at least 10 hours a day. Let's say half of my day is internal, and I have a lot of process to manage. I mean, whether it's with the team, whether it's with management, whether it's official visits. So it's I would say it's 60% is not that exciting. Then maybe I have 30% of major initiative that I'm pushing to bring change, that I devote. So for example, last week I was working on the connection. It's how much is it? It's a 450 million euro investment in Northern Africa to connect all the Northern African countries, and we want to provide them with 50 million euro grant to have high-speed internet for the next generation. So I'm working on that one. And then I'm supporting a startup incubator in Serbia. So it's a 50 million euro fund, so a couple of discussions. So I have big topics that I move that are changing. I mean, from Tunisia, sometime in Armenia, working on different things. And I think we launch soon a very interesting creative hub in Armenia that I've been following for many years. And then I try to say, and I want like, let's say 3 to 4 hours per week of inspiration. So my inspiration are coming from people who are a little bit different. And yesterday I had a lunch and a working meeting with people who are working on supporting social housing in Morocco and Ivory Coast. So we were looking for and exploring a model to ensure that at the same time there's an uptake from the private sector to build social housing, but we want to target people. When you do housing, you can do them in different ways. It has to be green because it's better, but the way you build also, that you build social ties and how do you get to link people. So it's a lot of linking people. So the financial aspect, architect, urban designer, and also politician. And so I have my space of having pleasure intellectually, but that's max 3 to 4 hours a week. I have my big flagship, and then management of the team, which is more coaching, supporting, pushing. So this morning, for example, I have a new team of newly recruited working on circular economy. And to say, what's the policies? How do we put money? How do we shape them? And how do you engage in public-private partnership? So diversity, but I would say from inspiration to super boring, but the 80-20 is there. If you don't have 20 that you really enjoy, you should really enjoy at least 20, and then the 80 you paid to work. Fair. But Natalia, and I'm so happy to be with Natalia because we used to give public speaking together in Armenia. It's been many years we have not done it.
Yeah, we had a great time working together, and I guess that's part of the 20%.
That's part of the 20%, yeah. Meeting
Yeah,
also the Ministry of Justice and pushing agenda for change. That was good.
That's part of and that brings me to a very good follow-up to what Bin just said. I mean, of course, we do a lot of paper pushing. We have to be very honest on that. But at the end of the day, it's down to the people you work with. Be it the people on your team, be it the people in the international community that you meet. And again, in Armenia, I was very lucky to have been as a colleague. Some other internationals where I think we did quite a good job while having fun, because you cannot do a good job if you don't have fun, right? So so the people, I think that's the most fascinating part of our work. As I said, in my work, I try to interact as much as possible with representatives of the civil society. I don't have so much connection with business as Bin would have, but usually this is the people that I get inspiration from. And as a general note in my career, the people that have really inspired me had I mean, their social status or what they did for living had nothing to do, or very few, with actually what they do it. I will give you a small anecdote from the time I was working with Doctors Without Borders in Chechnya. And so we were having radio stations which we were not supposed to have, because the Russian authorities were not happy with the fact that we had these radio stations to communicate between the different teams. And one day, the Russian military serviceman came to the house where all the internationals were, and started looking for the radio stations. And we had one of our cooks, a Chechen woman, a mother of probably 3 or 4 kids, did this very courageous act, basically risking her life. He took these big radio stations and put them in the cooker, closed the door, and stood in front of the cooker and told the Russians, okay, I mean, look for the radio stations. They are not here. So they looked all over the house and they didn't find them. And this woman was really risking her life. This is, I mean, it happened, I don't know, it happened more than 20 years ago. But this really has stuck with me. And so, yeah, people, definitely, that's the most inspirational part. I'm quite lucky because as a head of office, I have quite a lot of liberty in terms of where to put my priorities, although I have also obligations to attend official meetings, to write reports, to sit for hours in Zoom meetings, more or less useful, usually less than more useful. Also, has been mentioned, coaching, management of the team is essential, especially now in COVID times, where people telework. It makes our our work as managers even much more difficult. My other sort of challenge is because I'm in the field office and the headquarters is back in France, in Strasbourg. There is also this distant interaction that also adds some difficulty. So I would say that it's a balancing act all day long, but you have to find the resources to resource yourself. Otherwise, you can go into burnout and demotivation. And the other thing is that you have to change your job, I would say, like between 3 and 5 years, because otherwise you really get into your comfort zone, which is good, but it gets on your system at the end of the day. And the last thing which I have found very important is to keep learning. As I said in my bio, I did a MSc at LSE 2 years ago, and that was great. That was absolutely fabulous, because the area psychology and behavioral science has nothing to do with my job. But the skills that I learned there, I'm trying to embed them in what I do on a daily basis. So learning is crucial, and I think it's even more crucial for the new generation, because maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, you would go to university, you would graduate when you're 23, 25, and that's all. But now we say that you have to sort of to reset yourself every 5-7 years, because the world is so dynamic. It's changing. So it's very important to continue learning and challenging yourself.
All right, thank you so much, Natalia. So time for one last question. I'll direct this to Bien, because Natalia, I think you did a really great job of giving this. What would be one bit of advice that you would like to leave with our students who are watching today? Just kind of one last final bit of advice.
I mean, it's important to love what you're doing. So do what you love, and if you don't know what you love, you're on the way. I think love is a complex issue. You don't know what you're gonna love until you start. So walk the walk and see and change, but don't be afraid of walking the walk. And I think that there's many different walk, but as long as you take pleasure, even if it's only 20%, and it's true, all comes back to people. I mean, last time I was giving a talk there was a talk in my unit, and they were asking me what job I would have loved to do. I told them, I don't know, I thought about kindergarten teacher. And it was funny. I really thought deep inside that it would have been a good kindergarten teacher. And then my people in my unit were asking me, but how do you feel not being a kindergarten teacher? And then I felt like, maybe it's not that different, you know? You whether it's small, it's big. When you're committed, you see the change, you interact. And if it's something you like, just do it. So find the pleasure. And there's a lot of things, and the meaning also, because when it's hard, we have to hang to the meaning, because we had difficult time in Armenia during different moments. So unless you really believe there's a reason why you do it, you tend to let go, and you don't do the extra miles that sometimes is needed. That's it. But great for the invitation, and great to see you back, Natalia. I'm super happy.
All right, well, thank you to you both. Thank you, Bien. Thank you, Natalia, and thank you, Elaine, who had to leave early. We really appreciate you spending this time with our community and inspiring our students and alumni. Thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this webinar, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening, the day, the afternoon, wherever you are.
Thank you, Harvey. Thanks, Shanna.